Hello and welcome into the Cubs on Deck podcast. My name is Greg Huss, and today I am joined by my co-host Bryan Smith, and we're doing an emergency pod. I think that this might be the first emergency pod, like episode not dropping on a Tuesday morning that we've ever done.
Really?
I feel like there had to have been one other one. There had to have been one other one. I just can't think of it.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, these episodes are always weird for us as prospect guys because, we're losing little pieces of our heart, but we know that it's for the greater good.
Yeah, so the Cubs traded away. They acquired Edward Cabrera on what is it? Wednesday afternoon. Actually, the news initially dropped from friend of the show Michael Cerami posted the breaking news that the Cubs were finalizing a trade for Edward Cabrera on Wednesday morning, and then it came through on Wednesday afternoon. All the details, which included 3 Cubs prospects going back to the Miami Marlins as a part of the deal: Owen Caissie, Edgardo De Leon, and Cristian Hernandez. So, I don't know, man. There's a lot to dig into here, but we're going to be quick, efficient with this episode. I think that the way we're going to go about doing it is to start off by just digging into each of the 3 players and what the Cubs lost. And this, I mean, I view this episode 2 different ways, right? It's kind of a pour one out for these 3 guys, especially 2 of the guys here that we've talked about a lot over the past several seasons, but also like, hey, if you're a Marlins fan tuning in trying to learn a little bit more about these players that you just acquired, you can do that here too. But also just like, I think that the end we'll kind of dig into the state of the system. Like how does this trade impact the Cubs farm system moving forward? Am I missing anything here?
No, I mean, I feel like we should start with just sort of our view when we read the 3 names as guys that sort of, know these players a little more intimately. When you read this was what the Cubs were giving up to the Marlins for Cabrera, did you think it was too much, too little, or sounded about right?
I think it was actually it was less than I expected. If I don't that kind of answers your question. It was less than I expected.
Yeah.
I texted you and Zumac and Brendan soon after Cerami. Is it a Cerami bomb? What's the?
Yeah, we got to work on one.
Soon after Michael Cerami dropped the news,
something in honor of him jumping in the lake like he did that one time, lake dive, a Cerami dive.
And so I think I gave my prediction for the package going back to the Marlins as Owen Caissie, Jonathan Long. Who else did I say? Pierce Capola, and I said one other guy. I think I forget.
A hitter.
I did say another hitter.
Yeah.
I said I should probably have this off the top of my head. This is what happens when we don't prepare as much for the episode. Yeah. So moral of the story is that the package that I expected to go back was probably bigger than what ultimately did. And so I was kind of pleased with that. And you're looking at these 3 guys, right? Owen Caissie is a top 100 prospect in all of baseball. That's clearly a big loss to the system. But Cristian Hernandez was a guy that got passed up on as far as being added to the 40-man roster this offseason, was not selected in the Rule 5 draft. So it's not like there is a ton of value in Cristian Hernandez going away. We'll get into like what the Cubs do lose in trading away, obviously. And then you got Edgardo De Leon, who has not made it to full season ball. And that's another weird element you throw into this. So we talked about this trade deadline with including like Wilfrey De La Cruz and Ronnie Cruz both included in trades, where it's like we didn't have eyes on these guys as much. You did have some eyes on Edgardo De Leon in the spring, but all in all, like I think I'll take this from the Cubs perspective. It's a fun trade from both sides, but like I was pretty pleased. I didn't look at it and think, damn, like we gave up a ton for Edward Cabrera. And someone asked me about like the Shane Baz trade that the Rays and the Orioles completed earlier this offseason. And I think the package that the Rays got back for Shane Baz was a lot bigger, was a lot more impressive of a package than the Marlins got for Edward Cabrera.
Yeah, those extra pieces felt like they were a tier up for sure.
Yeah. What was your
take? I think it became obvious to the Cubs when they went to the trade market last summer that the MLB marketplace saw Jackson Wiggins as their top prospect, and I think initially it caught the Cubs a little off guard, and because I think that, they thought that maybe his ascent would go a little less noticed than it did.
Yeah.
And so I'm impressed that the Cubs were able to get a trade for a starting pitcher, which I think they knew they needed to do without having to give Wiggins away, which now sort of allows them to try to get two starting pitchers out of this. I mean, their hope will be that Wiggins contributes at the major league level this year. And so getting a trade done for a guy that could pitch in the playoffs, that has the stuff to pitch against the highest quality bats in Major League Baseball, and not losing Wiggins feels like a win to me. And, the cost of doing business was always going to be one of those top bats. Shaw, Ballesteros, Caissie, they were going to always have to trade at least one of them. It was all sort of going to be about timing and playing chicken. If they waited too long, the value was going to drop. I think they waited a while, but I think this today proves they didn't wait too long. And now it's just time to get to work and turn this guy into a frontline starter.
I think being able to get what the Cubs believe is a top of the rotation starter, or that upside, without having with only giving up one player from that: Owen Caissie, Moises Ballesteros, Matt Shaw, Jackson Wiggins, even Jefferson Rojas and Kevin Alcantara, get Ethan Conrad, only giving up one from that huge group of players, I think in itself is a big win for the Cubs. By keeping Wiggins and Rojas, you still have some of that top 100 prospect upside in your system as of right now. I don't know. Do you view this in any way as so you had Owen Caissie and Moises Ballesteros both as lefty hitters in Chicago, and you also have Kevin Alcantara, which fits this weird Kevin Alcantara is weird in this whole equation, right? And I obviously at this point Kevin Alcantara is a tier down from Owen Caissie and Moises Ballesteros in terms of prospect pedigree and our expectations of him in the bigs moving forward. But the Cubs also need some help in hitting lefties in that outfield mix at the major league level right now. And Owen Caissie didn't do that. Kevin Alcantara does. Do you think this is a little bit of vote of confidence in Kevin Alcantara, or just kind of he's just part of the equation left over?
I mean, I do feel like they had a feeling that they still have a little upside to develop in the outfield, which gives them a little bit of protection if Happ and Suzuki both leave next year. But I don't know. It's hard for me to think that it's correlated in that sort of direct way where it means that they're more confident in Alcantara. I think those guys fit in different buckets, and I think it's more shows that they picked Ballesteros. I think Craig Counsell really liked what he saw in Ballesteros down the end of the year, and I think they are increasingly comfortable with the idea of him taking the at-bats against right-handed pitchers at DH this season, which is exciting. And we've debated the Caissie Ballesteros thing for about as long as we've had the show, and so this is really the time where the Cubs chose in a certain extent. And that's not entirely fair because the market chose as well. The Marlins have been after Owen Caissie for a year, we've learned, since talking about Luzardo last winter. But there's only one of those players left. It's Ballesteros, and we're going to have to hope that the Cubs chose the right guy. I do think they chose the guy more likely to succeed in 2026, and that fits their sort of organizational ambition a little better.
Yeah, you want to start digging into the players individually here, the three guys that got traded away?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk Caissie right now, I think, right?
Yeah, let's talk Owen Caissie. I think that makes the most sense building off this conversation. I'm rocking, if you guys are watching on YouTube, I'm rocking my Owen Caissie obvious shirt. I felt like today was the most appropriate of all days to rock an Owen Caissie shirt. I don't know, with Owen Caissie and Cristian Hernandez, we'll dig into Caissie first, but these are guys that were both acquired in ahead of the 2021 season, right? Owen Caissie was acquired January-ish, right, of 2021. And Cristian Hernandez was part of that international free agency class of 2021 as well, signing on January 15th of that year. So we've been talking about these guys for almost the exact same amount of time, and we've been talking a lot about both of these dudes and like picking apart in every fine grained detail of these guys on this show for the
Yeah.
past or on some sort of podcast or written work or on social media or take or text back and forth between each other or whatever it may be about Owen Caissie and Cristian Hernandez for a long, long time to the point where like both of them have started to experience some prospect fatigue in the Cubs organization. Owen Caissie is, in my opinion, man, I've said this and I said it on the prospect profile I did of him last week on last week's episode and on the YouTube channel, which I dropped this morning, that Owen Caissie is like, he is who he is since he was acquired in 2021, but he's just gotten a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better at every single stop as he climbed up through the farm system. And that was, I think, maybe Owen Caissie's most impressive skill during his time in the Cubs system was his ability to continue to improve and continue to make tweaks to his swing, to his approach, to things like that. We know the light tower power is there. Like we know that's part of what Owen Caissie is, but like I've just thoroughly enjoyed watching him like get better every single year in this system.
Yeah, and not only get better baseball wise, but a guy that I think a lot of scouts were worried that he was going to trend the wrong way from a body perspective, and he managed to gain all the strength I think that people thought was coming his way, but actually getting more athletic, I think, and more fluid, which is such a rare thing. He was, I think back on watching him in Myrtle Beach, like such an awkward runner, just somebody that just clearly hadn't grown into their body, but also you just thought this is not gonna get better. This is only gonna get clunkier, and it didn't. He's above average runner on straight line speed, which is pretty wild.
This dude played center field for the Iowa Cubs last year. Like he's not a center fielder, but like the fact that if we would have pictured that man from Myrtle Beach back in 2021 playing center field at the highest level of the minors a few years later, insanity.
Yeah. And then he just grew into the player that was sort of promised from the moment he was drafted with the Padres, which is just, this is a guy that could become a big time power hitter. And it wasn't always natural for him. We've talked before, he's a opposite gap hitter in his sort of heart of hearts. And the Cubs have had to work really hard with him to, pull the ball when it's appropriate and hit more and more fly balls, and he sort of met the challenge, and he has evolved. He is ready to hit 20 home runs in the major leagues. He still has 35 plus homer potential. I think, personally, I think he's the prospect in the Cubs system that I would say has the highest chance of posting a really good offensive, like not quite silver slugger, but just like one notch below that of any hitter in the Cubs system. A special player. I think he'll have some growing pains, and I think the Marlins will be rewarded for being able to be patient with him. And I predict pretty good things for like 2028 Owen Caissie.
Yeah, man. I like him getting a full season's worth of growing pains out of the way in Miami this year, just posting up in right field every single day. Just seems incredibly important for Owen Caissie specifically. It's important for every prospect coming up to the majors, but like for Owen, it's like, I don't know, man. It feels like extra important given his hitting profile, right? Given the fact that dude's going to strike out 34% of the time in the majors this year. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And like, that's okay because I think he can bring it down to 30% in 2027 and maybe 28% in 2028 and then like hover there while also having some really good power. That's an important part that you called out, right? Like that like notch below silver slugger type upside for Owen Caissie, because like, you're right. There's not another guy in the system where like I see multiple 130 or greater WRC plus seasons in their future in the major leagues.
Yeah.
Like I think Moises Ballesteros is a very, very, very good hitter, but like I think he lives like in that like 115 to 120 range more than like 130 to 135 range on occasion, right? And so, that was Owen Caissie. That was what Owen Caissie had. Now, did the Cubs have the ability to be as patient as what he needs? Probably not. That's why he fits in a trade to the Miami Marlins,
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is his situation could, if he had gone back to Iowa this year, it could have reminded people of Michael Busch with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And when the Dodgers, they waited a bit too long on Michael Busch, and what they were able to trade him for were two quality but lottery ticket prospects. And what the Cubs were able to trade Caissie for by just trading him a touch earlier was getting a guy with 3 years of control who, struck out 150 batters last year. And so I think moving that little bit earlier, before that major league struggles, before it was clear he was blocked to get to Chicago, I think benefited the Cubs here. But at the same time, that doesn't change the player that the Marlins got. I think the Marlins will look back on this trade and be happy, because I think they're going to be able to plug 6 years of a quality outfielder in.
You had, I'm assuming, Owen ranked as a top 3 prospect in the Cubs system at the time of the trade.
Yeah, I think I ended up deciding that he was second. It was either first or second for me. I ended up ranking him second when I sort of wrote it down for the final time. But yeah, I mean, to me, a top 50 prospect for sure. An argument for being even higher. Yeah, it'll be weird to watch him next year, man. He really has seemed like such a part of following Cubs prospects for this decade. I mean, we talked this summer about just the fatigue that we could feel that fans that didn't even really follow the minor leagues were feeling about this guy that they kept hearing about.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and find. I posted on Twitter and Blue Sky. I think it was early. I think it was right around the time he got called up to the majors this past summer, where I was like, I've watched more Owen Caissie at bats during his professional career than like most human beings alive, right? Like I watch a lot of Owen Caissie, a lot.
Yeah.
Every week I'm watching a dozen or more at bats of him over the course of the past 4 years.
Yeah.
And so I've seen a lot of Owen Caissie, but to say I'm confident in what his final outcome in the majors is would be ridiculous. I don't know how good he ends up being in the major leagues. And so for anybody else to be like, oh, like I feel really confident that Owen Caissie's going to suck, or I feel really, really confident that he's an all-star. Like, I don't know, man, like maybe I could see both sides of it. I really could. I think the last thing I have to say about Owen is just that, like, it's been an absolute pleasure watching him both on the field and hearing everything. I haven't talked to Owen individually. I haven't talked with him personally over the past few years, but everybody I've talked to has just had nothing but awesome things to say about Owen Caissie during his time in the system.
I ran into Owen on Southport, a couple blocks from Wrigley, after the Cubs beat the Padres this offseason. And so it's, it was very quick, just wished him luck. And I guess I didn't realize that I was wishing him luck for a long career somewhere else, but definitely still feel that way. Definitely rooting for that guy.
The next piece that the Cubs traded away was Cristian Hernandez, which, I mean, like I said with Owen, like we've been talking about Cristian for a long time.
I mean, before he was in the Cubs system, I mean, well before, probably 2 years before he signed with the Cubs, we had heard that the Cubs were the favorites to sign. Initially it was the top player in the class. Then as we got a little closer, it became like one of the top 6 players in the class. I believe biggest bonus the Cubs ever gave to an international free agent. And yeah, I mean, I remember seeing him in spring training. I remember being so excited. He was the person that I wanted to see in spring training. And when he first came stateside, and yeah, I've talked about that before on the podcast, like the positives and the negatives of the experience of watching Cristian Hernandez just as raw as can be when he first came. And he had that amazing, I think you and I will always go back to that 2024 season where, like, he really transformed the player he was when it was starting to go really sideways. It just wasn't working. And he was able to listen to coaching, to change his approach, and to find a way to be a productive baseball player, and was able to maintain that. And he's an interesting player. I think you and I have both sort of been on his side the last year and a half, like more than other people, saying, this is a shortstop. This is a guy still with some offensive upside. Obviously, the stolen base numbers are ridiculous. yeah, I'm really interested to see, another set of coaches gets their claws into him and what they can do. I still think that there could be a productive player there.
Yeah, the ride we've gone on with Cristian Hernandez is
Yeah,
crazy, dude. Like from him being that top international free agent signing and
yeah,
getting the stupid A-Rod, Manny Machado comps that have
yeah,
followed him to the point where we're talking about it here today. Um, and him being this guy that was projected as like big time power and kind of five tool player, all these different things. And then I remember would it have been that 2024 season where he kind of made those adjustments and he became really more of like a contact oriented player, right? Like the swing and strike numbers were still higher than you'd like, but like the batting average, he was kind of like really good at putting the ball in play here and there, just not
yeah,
as hard as you would like to see. I remember seeing a lot of like the scouting reports, like the national scouting reports, still labeling him as like this big time power, like this guy that produces this big time power. Is like that wasn't really him anymore. Like that's and still to this day, like he's not really that guy. This past season, I remember back in 2025, we saw Cristian Hernandez really start to lean into some like serious pull side power, like not like oh like light tower pull side power, but like learning how to get out in front of the baseball so he can tap into that pull side power and hit home runs over the wall that side. And then it just didn't really continue that second half of the year in
right.
2025. But like it's okay. I someone had pointed out to me like how different is Cristian Hernandez than Luis Vasquez from a few years ago, right? Where like we were looking at Luis Vasquez, we're like, oh, like this is a really good like defensive shortstop, and can be a shortstop in the major leagues if he can just hit a little bit. Luis Vasquez was something, and I don't like they're different. There's a whole lot of different differences between the two, but like I don't view Cristian Hernandez all that differently than Luis Vasquez from a couple of years ago, right? I think the defense is really impressive. Like it's better than than single A baseball for sure. Brendan King, the broadcaster for the South Bend Cubs, has said that Cristian Hernandez is the best defensive infielder that he's seen during his time in South Bend, and he's been there for several years. So for
Really
him,
good footwork.
really
Really,
good
really good
footwork,
footwork.
and I think that footwork also translates to him on the base path. Like he's a
Yeah,
fast dude, but like he's also just a really good base runner.
yeah.
And
Feels
so
like a soccer player that like outgrew playing soccer almost. You
yeah,
know.
yeah. So I'm hopeful there's a little bit more upside from him. Like I had Christian ranked as the number 11 prospect in the Cubs
I
organization.
did
I
as
think you were the
well.
same way, which like feels appropriate, right? Like just outside the top 10, a guy that has that pedigree, has all the other skills outside of hitting nailed down. Now he just needs to bring that pedigree of hitting back into the mix. You know what I mean?
And that's an area of a little bit of depth for the Cubs because if you look at rankings, James Triantos, Pedro Ramirez, Angel Cepeda, Christian
Those are real
Hernandez, those guys are all in the same exact spot on Cubs prospects list.
Oh yeah.
They're different, their ability to play shortstop varies guy to guy and their hit tool certainly varies a lot guy to guy, but I think that does, that motivated some of why Hernandez was not really even considered for the 40-man roster was the Cubs felt like they had some depth there and they were okay with leaving him exposed, and I think it also led to them being okay with trading him.
Hilarious on my part that every single trade that's happened over the past however long, I've said, oh, Christian Hernandez might be a good fit as a part of this
Yeah.
trade. And then the one where he actually does get included, I did not mention him at all in my prediction, which is wildly appropriate. You got anything else on Christian before we move along here?
No, I mean should start in Double A for the Marlins. I think he's ready for that jump, and
Yeah.
it'll probably be a mixed campaign. But you mentioned Luis Vasquez. I would throw out like Andrew Monasterio was a guy the Cubs traded and was just starting to break out. It took a long time, but a really helpful player on the Brewers last year. Cristian Hernandez is more talented than Andrew Monasterio was when the Cubs traded him. And so, the Marlins have a chance at developing a helpful major leaguer here.
Dude, I loved Andrew Monasterio as a Cubs prospect so much. I
I
loved
know.
him. I
Yeah.
did. I was so
They
disappointed
break
when
our
he left.
hearts with these trades, man. I'm telling you.
I know. Another player that your heart might be broken over.
It broken.
Edgardo De Leon was the third piece as a part of this trade package. You were the first person to mention Edgardo De Leon that I'd never heard of him prior to you mentioning him. So you want to give us a little bit of background on his story?
Yeah, I may have told this story one other time on the pod, but I was at the backfields in spring training this year, and I was watching a guy play who didn't have a name on the back of his jersey, and I asked our two just legends that are in the backfields in Arizona, Rich Biesterfeld and Arizona Phil of the Cub Reporter, who this guy was, and initially they were like, I don't know. That guy has not been around. We came to find out it was Edgardo's first day in the U.S. happened to be the day that I was there, and Rich, of course, ended up finding out who it was. And I mean, this guy just jumped out because he has the most ridiculous bat speed and really just like one of the sillier swings you're ever going to see. I mean, he just swings. He swings out of his shoes, but like. That sounds insulting. It's not. Like, he just swings so hard. He puts everything into his swing, and it's really pretty to watch. It's really violent, but really cool. And so I was rooting for him, a guy that I thought would strike out an absolute ton in the complex league and probably not walk very much, but hit a couple cool home runs. And actually, like, improved a lot over the course of the season there. He started to take more walks as the year went along, started to get some actual like solid production, then continued it in the bridge games they played afterwards. And this is a nice get for the Marlins. The third parts of trades always kill me. It's like, being the nerd this way. This is like when Ty Johnson went to the Rays, and I came on here and wept. This one has a chance to hurt because it just feels like a nothing burger. But I had him as the 19th prospect in the system in my rankings, and I think he was headed up. And so, I mean, who knows? It could be he could have a horrible 2026, and we might not ever think of him again. But the Marlins went for upside here, and to me, if you're going to make this trade as the Miami Marlins, go for upside, and they did.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The third piece types, whether it's an actual third piece or like a minor trade where a third piece type of player gets traded away, they kill me, man. And it really, honestly, what it really does is it shows how good all organizations are at identifying like arrow up type players. Like you read like a prospect, you read something from Baseball America, and they post a prospect list and they say, oh, like arrow up on this guy. It's like that's what teams are looking for, right? They're looking for guys that are like maybe a little bit undervalued, but they think that they are just going in the right direction. Edgardo De Leon last year in the Arizona Complex League hit 276 with a 353 OBP and slugged 500. But you're right. It's just he hits the ball really, really hard because he swings really, really hard. 90th percentile exit velo, courtesy of Baseball America, is 107.6. Max exit velo is 113. So just really good contact, really hard hit balls. But he also, like you mentioned, swings and misses a whole lot. Baseball America had him at a 34% whiff rate and a 24% zone miss rate, which like those numbers are like astronomically high. So,
and I've heard he's really rough at third base right now too, and the way that he's growing might signal that it's first base. So you're talking about a right-handed hitting first baseman. So, that's why I think the Cubs were willing to give up this upside, was the profile, might not grow to be a profile that's super valuable, but what's super valuable is 450-foot home runs.
I mean, I think that like with Edgardo De Leon, you're looking at like if you're the Marlins, you're hoping that you can get Jonathan Long out of this, right? Like you can make him Jonathan Long, which I thought Jonathan Long was going to be the number 2 piece in this trade. So like if you can turn this number 3 piece into a number 2 piece, there you go. That seems like a win on their part. So he was slated to be. I had him slated to start off the 2026 campaign in Myrtle Beach, playing first, maybe dabbling in third base a little bit, but That's where I started. That's where I expect him to start off in the Marlins organization as well.
Yep, I agree. I think, you know, and just I think where we should go next is just talking about the system as a whole and what's left here. And the one thing I wanted to throw out to you that struck me about this trade was what this trade accomplishes for me for the Cubs is that it takes off needing to trade for a starting pitcher at the trade deadline unless, you know, you talk about a multiple injury situation, because you're going to get Justin Steele back midseason, and now you've kept Jackson Wiggins, so you're projecting to add him midseason. And that's not even to mention Colin Ray, Javier Assad, Jordan Wicks, Ben Brown. So you're talking about, is, you know, they've put themselves in a really nice depth position, but not just depth either. They have impact coming for them in the middle of the season that's going to help. And so what I think that does is it allows them to be more confident to thin out their farm system now, because the needs that they're going to project to have come July are less significant. And the thing that always costs you the most in July is going to get a starting pitcher. So if they know that that's off the table, then they're going to be confident that they can still get that one extra bat. They're still going to be confident they can get two relievers or whatever they're going to need to do. So their farm system is going to be rated bad. You know, I mean, we can come out and tell you guys that. But I think that they are okay because they know that they don't need a ton else on the trade market from their farm system until next winter, really.
Yeah, and actually, so I agree with all that, and I'll add in one additional element is that with Edward Cabrera being locked in under contract through the 2028 season, like there's a lot coming off the books for the Cubs over the next couple of years, right? With in terms of position players and pitchers.
Yep.
Losing Matt Boyd, losing Jameson Tyone, but then also on the position player side, Nico Horner and Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki and Carson Kelly and yeah. But like that's a lot to lose. And so like you're needing to replenish all of that with either going out and getting free agents, which you can't get a team's worth of free agents, or replenishing them with people from within your farm system, which is not a lot there already, right? So like if you can go and get Edward Cabrera, who's already locked in, that takes out one piece from that rotation mix that you're going to need to replace in a couple of years. And so it takes a little bit of pressure off the farm system to continue to produce in Chicago in 2027, 2028, which is a kind of a nice added bonus for this.
And I keep saying that they were able to keep Jackson Wiggins. The other person they were able to keep that I didn't know that they would be able to get a trade done without having to deal is Jefferson Rojas, who was trending up so much when he was with South Bend during the year, and then, you know, got really beat up on the move to AA like we often see. And I think it put a little chink in the armor of his prospect pedigree. And what they can do here is they have a chance to build that pedigree back up. If they continue to develop him into the player he can be, then they have a chance at, you know, restoring his value to be a top 75 prospect in the sport. And then they can make the decision whether, you know, does Nico Horner walk and you might need Rojas in either 27 or 28 to play second base, or does he become the next player that you trade for another, you know, promising veteran from another team? So there's value in not just who you acquire, but who you don't trade away. And to me, Wiggins and Rojas are the two where I'm like sort of the most impressed that they were able to sort of get this done, get a controllable starting pitcher, and not have to give up.
Yeah, the Rojas thing. I texted you before the package ended up coming in and being finalized. That like giving up Rojas as a part of this package, even if it was just Caissie and Rojas, and you didn't have to have three players, seemed like that would have just been quite the hit to the system in terms of like expecting Jackson Wiggins to graduate by the end of this season.
Yep.
And then also expecting Moises Ballesteros to graduate within the first month of this season, month or two, whatever that he needs. Like that then leaves not a whole lot as far as you got Ethan Conrad who came in. He hasn't taken a single professional at bat. Like giving up Jefferson Rojas, it's like you're looking around after Wiggins graduates and you're like, who's here that could be a prospect in baseball? Like there's not like you're hoping for a major breakout from Angel Cepeda. And it's like that's a big hope going into this 2026 campaign. So like, I guess my point is like holding on to Rojas feels incredibly important to this organization, to the system, especially for a system that like even with Rojas in it, like this is not like you said, like we're not sitting here trying to paint a rosy picture of the system right now because there's not a whole lot of positives in terms of like this is not a top 20 organization or a system in all of baseball. I think when you see some new re-ranks come out, I don't know if some have already come out this offseason or they're going to come in right before the season. I think this is probably a bottom 5 system in all of baseball, and you're looking at a system that in my opinion is probably closer to that 2017 2018 era system than we'd like to admit.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, you and I certainly have our disagreements with the national outlets about where Jackson Wiggins is getting ranked. I think there's some real mistakes happening there that will prove out on the baseball field. And so that would, boost up their farm system ranking a little bit if he was being sort of more properly ranked. But yeah, I mean, the depth is really rough. When we start talking about losing 3 off like the 11 through 20 part of it, and now you're looking at who are the, I don't know, 18th, 19th, and 20th prospects in the system. It's not great relative to other organizations, I would say. So the Cubs have their work cut out for them this year. I mean, there needs to be a significant developmental season happening that restores depth and restores upside at the top of the rankings. So it'll be a little tricky, but there are guys there are still guys with upside. There are the Caleb Wings of the world that we can now cling our hopes onto.
Quick side note with you mentioning Jackson Wiggins being underrated by national publications. What's going to happen? What's going to happen is he is not going to get called up in like June. It's going to be in July or August, a little bit later than expected, just a little bit. And it's going to be enough time for national outlets to release their updated like midseason rankings, and they're going to squeeze him into like the top like 30 in those midseason rankings. So when he makes his debut a week later, they're like, "Oh, look, we had him top 30. Like we called it." It's like, "No, you didn't. You didn't call it. You had him at the back end of top 100s going into the season." So
what's going to be really cool is in spring training this year, you're going to have Edward Cabrera throwing a bullpen, throwing 99, 100 mile per hour fastballs with significant arm side run, throwing 94 mile per hour changeups, and throwing a nasty slider 90 miles per hour. And on the frickin' mound next to him, you're going to have Jackson Wiggins doing the exact same thing with all those same pitches. And so, as much as it's essential here for the Cubs to develop Edward Cabrera into his upside, it's equally important for them to do the same with Jackson Wiggins. Those two guys are, if the Cubs have ambitions to win 2 playoff series in October, which they absolutely should, it will have to be on the back of those 2 guys starting a playoff game, in my opinion, in addition to Cade. And so go get it done. You got the stuff now. We haven't had the stuff in a rotation in a long time. They have it. Now it's about making it work.
All right, last question before we wrap up here. So a lot of times we talk about winning or losing the trade. And I don't like doing that right here and now because it's tough. It's tough to say, right? We have to kind of wait and see how things play out. But what might make the biggest difference in either the Cubs side or the Marlins side and the players they got back over the next like 12 months? Like, is it just health from Edward Cabrera? Is it him needing to take a pretty significant step up in terms of the fastball? Is it on the Marlins side? Is it Owen Caissie succeeding almost right away? Like, what makes us look back a year from now and be like, oh, that was lopsided one way or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the biggest concern obviously is if Cabrera gets injured and misses more than a year with a significant arm injury, it's going to be hard to look back on this as a win, especially if it's one of those situations where he misses like, a year and a half of a season or something. I mean, the value here are the 3 years of control you have. And so getting 400 innings out of him is really important to achieving the goals of this trade. what's also important is, I think the Cubs would trade. I think they would be okay with 90 innings this year. If I told Jed Hoyer, you can have 100, 140, 150 innings, but he's kind of out of gas in September. You can have 90, but he's healthy and he's able to start a playoff game for you. He would take those odds of having Cabrera in a playoff game because the stuff is so good that it can get out Dodgers hitters. Which is something that, we saw in the playoffs this year. They just ran out of confidence that they had starters that could get the Brewers out. And they will not lack confidence that Cabrera can get Brewers hitters out if he's healthy. And so, what makes this trade a win for the Cubs? It's if Cabrera starts a playoff game.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really excited to watch Owen Caissie do his thing on a daily basis over Miami. I'm really excited to see how Cristian Hernandez continues to develop. I'll keep an eye on Edgardo De Leon as a part of the system, the Marlins system. That's one of my favorite things too. Like there's been a lot of prospect trades from the Cubs perspective over the past few years, losing a ton of prospects from the system. That's what leads to the poor depth across the board. And I go back and watch and keep up with what's going on with those guys in their new organizations. And part of that is like, man, the Cubs could have that. But also part of it is like, I watch these guys a ton in the Cubs organization. Why would I not continue to follow them as a part of their new organization? So I'm excited to do that with all three of these guys.
For sure.
All right, man. Anything you want to plug before we wrap this up here?
What I'll plug is that if you belong to the 1060 West Discord, you might have felt like it really was worth your membership the last 24 hours in terms of knowing about this trade. I guess that's all I'm willing to say here, but it's a good reason to join because it's a good place to be when news is starting to break.
Yeah, you were maybe just a little bit less surprised. That's all.
Right.
That's all. And it's a great community in general. I think there was a lot of really good conversations today, especially today, the chaos of all of it. While we were waiting for the details of the trade, it was a fun place over at 1060 West. So hit up Brian if you want an invite to that. He will send you over one. As far as me, find me over on Twitter, on Blue Sky, out of the Vines. I've been writing a little bit more over on the blog, Out of the Vines. I've been posting stuff at least weekly, a couple, 2 or 3 things a week over at the blog. So go check that out, outofthevines.com. But besides that, we've got a couple interviews that are in the works. It's been delayed a little bit with travel down to Arizona. That was another, we didn't talk about that. The chaos of the delay on this trade was, I think, because Edgardo De Leon was on a plane on his way to Arizona. I think Brad.
I don't think I knew that.
Down. And so, the prospects are moving over to Arizona right now to start some training over there down in Mesa. And so that's put a tweak into some of the scheduling conflicts of this podcast. But I've got a couple things potentially lined up. We'll see how those end up working themselves out. But in the meantime, we'll be back in your ears in a short amount of time. Thanks, guys.